Dear Cancer, if your eyes have paused here, if a quiet stillness has settled over you, know that this is no coincidence. It is a summons from a part of yourself you thought was locked away behind your unbreachable shell. There is a truth waiting to be revealed, a truth that echoes in the marrow of your bones, an invisible weight you've carried without ever knowing its name. Have you ever felt a profound exhaustion that sleep cannot touch? A weariness that seems to cling to you like a damp shroud, even on the brightest of days? Or perhaps you've had dreams where you carry the sorrows of others, waking with a heart heavy with a grief that isn't yours? You are not imagining it, Cancer. There is a reason for this sacred exhaustion. It is the first sign that your soul is beginning to stir from a long, enchanted slumber. An invisible architecture has been built around your spirit, designed not with malice in the way you might think, but with a love so desperate, so fearful, that it has become a cage. It involves a keepsake, yes, an image of you held within the space of two women, a mother and a daughter. But to focus on them is to miss the point entirely. The real story lies not in their actions, but in the part of your soul that has been quietly negotiating for its freedom. So, before we descend into the heart of this truth, take a moment to honor the part of you that led you here. Let your energy join this collective by liking this video, sharing it with a soul who may need it, and subscribing to become a part of this sacred space. Your subscription is more than a click. It is a silent declaration that you are ready to listen to the whispers of your own spirit. And in the comments below, I want you to affirm this by writing, "I am ready to reclaim my energy." Stay with me until the very end, because the final revelations are not just insights, they are the keys to your liberation. This journey, dear Cancer, begins in a place you know all too well. A love that felt like a home, but was, in truth, a beautifully decorated prison. Not every force that seeks to contain us arrives with thunder and threats. Some come bearing gifts. They speak in whispers of care. They wrap you in hugs that feel like shelter. And yet, have you ever felt your own light dimming in their presence? A slow, imperceptible shrinking of your soul. A quiet compromise you made just to keep the peace. You once called them family, or perhaps a love so deep it felt like destiny. You trusted them, but even then, in the deepest, most silent chambers of your heart, your intuition was sounding a soft alarm. There was a persistent hum of something being off, a dissonance between the words they spoke and the energy they emanated. It was a pain without a wound, a confusion you could never articulate, and so you learned to swallow it, mistaking their control for concern, their possessiveness for passion. Listen closely, for this is where the unseen becomes visible. There are two feminine energies, a mother and a daughter, connected in a lineage of fear, who have held your image in their minds and hearts as if it were a precious, captured bird. This isn't a curse spoken in a dark room. It is a ritual of the heart, an act of soul, imprisonment born from their own unresolved trauma, and a desperate need to control what they cannot understand. Your light. They didn't do this because you are weak, Cancer. They did this because your very essence, your empathy, your boundless heart, your instinct to nurture is a mirror. And in that mirror, they saw everything they had sacrificed in themselves. Your light did not provoke their hatred, it illuminated their own darkness. And rather than face the monumental task of healing their own wounds, it was easier to try and dim your shine, to keep you small, to make you dependent, to convince you that their cage was, in fact, a sanctuary. One of these souls is likely connected to you by a bond that feels ancient and complicated. It could be a maternal figure, a mother, a grandmother, an aunt who taught you that love meant sacrifice. She was the one who instilled in you the belief that your needs were secondary, that a good heart was a quiet one, that you had to earn your place through silent service. She loved you, yes, but through the distorted filter of her own emotional debts, planting in you a seed of perpetual obligation you could never quite repay. The other is a soul from your past, a friendship that felt like sisterhood, a love that felt like your life's great story. That connection may have ended in the physical world, but in the landscape of their heart, it never did. Your departure, your growth, your choice to move on was not seen as a natural evolution. It was perceived as a profound betrayal. And so, they held onto a piece of you, a keepsake, a memory, a gift you once gave them, and through it, they have kept an energetic cord attached, whispering your name into the ether, not with prayers for your happiness, but with a desperate plea for you to return to the version of you they could understand, the version they could control. They don't need knives when they can wield your own memories against you. They don't need to shout when their silent disappointment echoes louder than any scream. They don't bind your hands. They bind your belief in yourself, subtly reinforcing the idea that you are too sensitive, too fragile, too emotional to survive on your own. This is a possessive, suffocating love. And when you began to yearn for the open sky, when you started to dream beyond their garden walls, they felt abandoned. And in that perceived abandonment, they anchored you to their altar of memory, a place where you would forever remain the obedient, nurturing Cancer they needed you to be. And here lies a profound truth, Cancer. Family, if not forged in freedom, becomes the most intricate and invisible of shackles. Love, if born from a deep-seated fear of loss, transforms into a quiet spell, binding two souls together in a dance of silent suffering. You thought you couldn't leave because you owed them something, because of a history steeped in emotional debt. But I ask you to place a hand on your heart and ask it again. Does a love that is true ever demand that you shrink your soul to fit inside it? Does someone who genuinely wishes you well need to manipulate, to project, to perform quiet rituals just to keep you near? There are those who do not want you to leave, not because they love the essence of who you are, but because your light has become the fuel they use to avoid their own emptiness. You, dear Cancer, are not at fault. You are not to blame for loving with an open heart, for trusting with a soul that knows no other way. You are not to blame for staying silent when your intuition screamed, or for giving so much of yourself for so long that you forgot where you ended and they began. You are a brilliant, shimmering light caught in a dense, intricate web of emotional manipulation disguised as care. And the miracle, the absolute, undeniable miracle, is that your light never went out. It was merely obscured, buried beneath layers of others' expectations, others' fears, others' unresolved pain, all done in the hollow name of love. You do not need to fight them. You do not need to confront them. You only need to rise and remember the primordial, unshakable light that resides within your own soul. You were never born to be a captive on anyone else's altar. You were born to be a living, breathing testament to freedom, and in doing so, to liberate the generations of souls before you who never dared to live their own truth. If a face, a name, or even just a feeling is surfacing in your mind right now, someone who loved you with conditions, someone whose care felt heavy, I invite you to write their initial, their name, or even just a symbol for them in the privacy of a journal. Do this not to curse them, not to send back any darkness, but as a sacred act of separation. This is you telling the universe with quiet conviction, this energy is not mine, and I no longer consent to carry it. This is the first step in reclaiming the geography of your own soul. But what they did, Cancer, is not nearly as frightening as what you have endured in the silence that followed. The days you couldn't understand the source of your fatigue, the nights you were tormented by dreams you didn't dare speak aloud, the tears that would fall for no discernible reason, and those hollow moments where you wished you could simply dissolve, just to escape the weight of it all. You may have looked at yourself and thought, maybe I am just weak. Maybe I am broken. No, dear Cancer, you are not weak. You have been carrying mountains that were never yours to climb, and that is what we must speak of now. Because when you finally understand the true source of that exhaustion, you will begin to reclaim the power to release it completely and forever. You believe you are tired from work, from life, from the constant demands of the world. But the truth is, your soul has been carrying someone else's unresolved anger, their unwept tears, their silent screams. Have you ever woken up feeling as though you've just survived a battle in your sleep? Your body feeling dense and heavy, your mind a tangled web of anxious thoughts, and your heart so quiet it frightens you. You don't understand why. Every single time you stand on the precipice of a new beginning, some invisible force seems to pull you back into the familiar shadows of doubt and delay. You can't explain the sudden arguments that erupt with those you love most, especially when you are at your most vulnerable. You can't put words to the creeping emptiness that spreads within you, even when, on the surface, your life seems perfectly fine. And in those moments, that insidious whisper returns, "Am I just not built for happiness?" No, Cancer, it is not weakness. You are carrying energetic debris that does not belong to you. The dark dreams, the nameless heaviness, the cyclical patterns of disappointment. These are the imprints of a long-standing energetic ritual. This is not the dramatic black magic of stories. It is far more subtle and therefore far more insidious. It is an infusion of intention sent to you through objects you left behind, through words spoken with sweet-sounding pity, through looks that lingered a moment too long. You were the unwitting center of a ritual that took place in the silence of their everyday lives. It needed no temple, no chanting, no bells. It happened in their living room, where they stared at your photograph, not to remember you with love, but to draw upon your energy, to siphon your vitality. It happened in their tearful conversations with others, where they spoke your name not in prayer, but in a lament that was, in essence, a curse disguised as grief. I loved them so much, and they just left. Energy, dear Cancer, is like water. It flows to where it is needed, to where it is drawn. And you, with your unguarded heart, your boundless compassion, your unshielded soul, have unconsciously become a repository for other people's pain. You are the well into which they cast their darkest stones, the sacred grove where they dump their emotional waste, the sturdy wall they lean on until they can stand, only to blame that very wall when it begins to show cracks under the immense weight. You've struggled to sleep, not knowing that your energy was being pulled through invisible threads tied to people you once gave your heart to. You felt drained within the four walls of your own home, believing you were simply overthinking. You were being energetically tethered to an altar of their making. And when you don't realize who is holding a claim on your energy, you inevitably begin to doubt yourself. You believe you are lacking. You blame yourself for not being resilient enough, not positive enough, not enough. You settle for less in love, in work, in life, because a part of you has been convinced that's all you deserve. But it is time for you to reclaim your light. You cannot heal while you are still allowing others to hold the keys to your energetic home. You cannot rise while you are still being pulled back by an ex's obsession or a relative's disappointment. by souls who never truly wanted your freedom, only your proximity. You cannot step off that altar if, deep down, a part of you still believes you deserve to be kept there. The truth is, Cancer, the very moment you become aware of this dynamic is the moment the invisible chains begin to rust. The spell begins to break. You do not need revenge. You do not need to confront them. You do not need to prove anything to anyone. You simply need to call your own soul back home. Imagine, right now, a circle of brilliant, silver light expanding from your heart, pulsing outwards. See every thread from objects, from dreams, from words, from gazes gently dissolving as this light touches them. You don't need to cut them with force because you are choosing to vibrate at a frequency where they can no longer attach. But how, Cancer, do you make this permanent? How do you step away from that altar, not just with your body, but with your entire being? In the heart of this struggle, you have never been truly alone. There is an ancient matriarchal soul who has been standing guard, a presence you have felt but never been able to name. It is the gentle breeze that cooled your face as you cried, the sudden beam of light that pierced through the curtains at your moment of deepest despair, the wordless voice in a dream that woke you just before you fell too far. You may have dismissed it as coincidence, as your mind playing tricks, but it is the sacred presence of a spiritual ancestor, a grandmother of your soul's lineage, who has been silently holding a shield around you. She is the one who has been deflecting the worst of these energetic projections, who has been mending the tears in your aura while you sleep. And now, she is not just protecting you, she is offering you a way out. She is passing down a ritual of liberation, a gentle but powerful doorway for you to step through, out of the prison that has held your light captive for so long. You do not need grand ceremonies. She asks for only one thing, that you choose yourself with radical honesty. When you feel ready, find a quiet space. Place a single white candle before you, a symbol of your own pure light. Next to it, a clear glass of water to represent the cleansing of your emotional body. And finally, a small bowl of salt, the great purifier of the earth. Sit comfortably. Place both hands over your heart and speak slowly, as if calling a beloved home from a great distance. I call my soul back to me now. I call back every piece of my light, my energy, and my power. I release every invisible cord, every unspoken curse, every vow of loyalty made in pain. I close all old doors that lead to my diminishment, and I step fully into the new light of my own being. If you wish, write down all the emotions, memories, and wounds you are ready to let go of on a piece of paper. Be unflinchingly honest. When you are finished, safely burn it. Let the fire transform the energy. Let the smoke carry away the words you never dared to speak. Then, dip your fingers into the salt and touch your forehead, your heart, and your hands, sealing your intention. The most miraculous part of this ritual, Cancer, is not the objects. It is your sincerity. It is the profound intimacy of a soul choosing to care for itself. No one else can cleanse what you have silently endured. And you must know, energy does not need complexity to be powerful. A heart that chooses its own freedom can shatter barriers that were built over decades of resentment. And in your quiet moments, when you feel the old weariness creep back in, simply place a hand on your chest and whisper your own name with a tenderness you have reserved for everyone but yourself. I am here. I am alive. I do not belong on any altar except the altar of light within my own heart. That matriarch, that ancestral guide, is still here. Every time you light a candle for yourself, Every time you cleanse your space, every time you choose peace over engagement, she smiles. Because she knows her child, the soul once imprisoned by a love that wasn't love, is finally learning to walk in their own power. If you have ever felt a moment of unexplainable protection, a time you were saved without knowing why, share that moment in the comments below. Acknowledge it. Thank that unseen guardian. That very act of remembrance is an offering, an incense of gratitude that echoes through the realms. But be aware, Cancer, not everyone will celebrate your liberation. When a light that was once captive begins to shine brightly on its own, the darkness that fed on it becomes agitated. Someone is preparing to return, not because they miss you, not because they regret what they've done, but because they are losing their source of energy. They are losing control, and they believe that with just one familiar smile, one carefully worded apology, they can lure you back to the place where you once forgot your own strength. Do not open the door too quickly. Do not trust the ghost of a love that once brought you to your knees. Are you feeling it already? A sudden influx of them in your thoughts, old dreams returning with unsettling clarity, a message that arrives out of the blue right when you are feeling most fragile. Do not rush to call it fate. Some people only return because they cannot stand the sight of you thriving without them. This person from your past, who loved you with control, is returning because their soul cannot accept your evolution. They cannot fathom that you have healed the very wounds they used to manipulate you. They are betting on the memory of the person you used to be, the one who would accept silent suffering, the one who would stay out of pity, the one who would bow their head to avoid a conflict. You will recognize their return through its subtlety, a gentle, just checking in, as if no time has passed and no wounds were ever inflicted. They may even offer an apology, shedding tears, saying all the words you once yearned to hear. I was wrong. I miss you. I know how to love you now. And a part of your tender heart will ache, not because you still love them, but because that is the place where you were most deeply wounded. But you, Cancer, no longer live there. You have the right to keep that door closed, not out of anger or a lack of forgiveness, but because you are no longer the same person who lived in that house. You are no longer the one who will play the healer for their brokenness or dim your own light to soothe their insecurities. True love does not need to imprison to stay. It stays because you are free within it. It is the kind of love that asks for your expansion, not your contraction. If someone from your past is attempting to re-enter your life in their old form, write this declaration in your journal. I no longer live in the version of me you once knew. That is how you lock the door, not with rage, but with sovereign choice. And now, you stand at a new threshold. The final chapter of this journey is not a warning. It is a victory song. It is the moment you know, with every cell in your being, that no ritual can hold you, no darkness can touch you, no one can take away the light you have chosen to reclaim for yourself. They were used to seeing your head bowed. They whispered behind your back that you were too weak, that you would never make it on your own. They were wrong. No one could have predicted that you would turn your deepest wounds into wings. You have overcome what they thought would break you. You have walked through the shadows of those who loved you the wrong way, and still, you kept your heart from turning to stone. And now, no altar can hold your soul. The silence that once suffocated you has dissolved. You are sleeping more deeply. You are laughing from your belly. You have stopped explaining your resurrection to those who will never understand it. When they try to pull you into their dreams, all they find is an empty space because you no longer exist on that frequency. The final, most profound lesson, dear Cancer, is this. You do not need revenge. You do not need an apology. You only need to live, fully and unapologetically, in the truth of the light you have reclaimed. That is the most powerful response in the universe. When you walk forward, you heal the karmic map of your lineage. When you smile, not to prove a point, but because you are genuinely filled with joy, you are rewriting your destiny. You are no longer the one who needs saving. You are the miracle you were always searching for. If you have stayed until this very moment, if you have walked this entire journey with me, if your heart feels a little lighter and your breath a little deeper, I invite you to perform one final ritual. In the comments below, write down something you are now, finally, ready to release. A name, a memory, a feeling, a belief that has held you captive. Write it as if your soul is bearing witness. Write it as if your ancestors are reading it with you. Because when a Cancer declares their freedom, you not only liberate yourself, but you create a ripple of liberation for every soul who has ever been held in a similar way. Your words become a silent, powerful declaration. I am no longer held. I am no longer a victim. I am my own salvation. And then you will see, nothing can hold you back anymore. From here on, there is only light. There is only you whole, sacred, and gloriously, inextinguishably alive. Thank you for listening, not just with your ears, but with your entire soul. In a world that rushes, you chose to pause. You chose to return to yourself, and that has made all the difference.